Well, Russia's blockade of Black Sea ports is choking off Ukrainian grain exports. Many countries in the global south depend on the shipments to feed their people. Ukraine needs them to keep its economy going. To skirt the Russian threat, Ukraine's sending most of its exports to smaller ports along the river Danube on its western border. From there, most shipments go downstream into the EU waters of the Black Sea, where they should be safe from Russian attacks. But in the past few days, Russia has started to bomb Ukrainian ports on the Danube, creating more challenges for the country. DW's Amir Asif reports.
Anatoly Artemenko has been farming this land since shortly after the fall of the Soviet Union. His business has seen ups and downs, but nothing hit him as hard as this war and the Russian blockade of the Black Sea. With a hint of irony, Artemenko says this summer's harvest of grains and seeds has been fantastic, and not just for him. Ukraine's agriculture ministry estimates the nation will produce around 60 million tons. But Artemenko has only been able to move 10% of his stores. The other 90% is sitting here, waiting for a solution.
Just look at this. Isn't this great? This is a grain that feeds the whole world. Ukraine feeds perhaps 20% of the world. We have a lot of grain here. All these countries around the world, especially in Africa, are waiting for our grain, but we can't export it. It's really a shame.
Artemenko used to send his grains and seeds down the highway to the largest port in Ukraine, the Black Sea port of Odessa. Today, he's sending off a truck in a different direction. The best option now is the southwestern route via the Danube River. This narrow country road is now Ukraine's most important trade corridor, and it's overwhelmed.
The worst thing is the downtime, the fact that we are standing around like warehouses on wheels. We have to wait for a long time to see if a ship comes or not. Sometimes we sit here for weeks.
The small port town of Reni now has the historic responsibility of saving Ukraine's grain market, and that's made it a target for Russia.
Now, it's strictly forbidden to film at the port of Reni, but I just wanted to show you how close Romania is across the Danube River. A good swimmer could cross the river in just 15 minutes, and many thought that Russia would not be brazen enough to bomb a port just a few hundred meters away from a NATO member country.
But they did, sending in Shahed drones in the early morning of July 24th. Those drones destroyed port infrastructure, including a warehouse full of grain. About a week later, Russia attacked another grain storage site just 70 kilometers east of here in Izmail. Dmitry Holubiev runs a small shipping company and has grain warehouses in the area. The rerouting of trade through the Danube has brought him additional business, but at a serious risk. I ask him if the recent attack made him worry.
For my property, no. But for my people, we were of course very worried. Because during the attack, our people were in the port, and in fact in Izmail too. We were very worried about them. What's property? Human life is the most valuable thing. It's priceless.
Ukrainian shippers like Holubiev might be willing to brave the Russian threat, but many foreign vessels scheduled to collect the grain are more cautious. This creates yet another bottleneck.
The corn has been stuck inside of this warehouse for 3 weeks now, and they're finally able to move it out. They're going to load it into a truck and then drive it down to the port of Reni, where tomorrow they're going to wait on a handy-class ship to come pick it up.
If Holubiev manages to clear this warehouse, that'll be 10,000 tons of Ukrainian grain down and tens of millions more to go.
Now, John Storpert is a senior manager for environment and trade at the International Chamber of Shipping. They represent more than 80% of the world's merchant fleet. He joins us from London. Welcome to DW. We just heard that Ukrainian farmer saying that Russian blockades mean he can't export 90% of his crop. Is this situation unique for the shipping community, or are there precedents you've been able to learn from?
The most immediate precedent that springs to mind the tanker wars of 1984 to 1988, where exclusion zones were applied in the Persian Gulf, and ships had to transit under the threat of missile attack from Iran. We also have the experience of transiting dangerous waters around the world, particularly the piracy crisis off Somalia from 2008 to around 2013 gave us considerable experience of travelling through waters where significant threats exist. So this is not something we are new to. We are a very threat-aware industry and can prepare adequately.
And so given these significant threats, how and who decides whether the ships are safe to sail?
The decision will be made by the ship owner on the basis of a threat and risk assessment, and the risk will be specific to the ship and its voyage. Obviously, insurance is a significant factor. If we can't get insurance, we won't be able to sail in the region. For the time being, although a war risk area applies and additional premiums are paid, south of 4521, which is the exclusion zone that's been in force since the start of the war, it is possible still to sail and to export this grain.
And where are the skippers and crews in this process? Can they say no, given the clear risks and dangers?
Crews can refuse to traverse areas where significant threats apply. In a lot of cases, you'll find that seafarers will be willing to take the risk. They do get additional pay in these areas. And we are a robust industry. As I said, this is not the first time we've faced these sorts of threats, these risks. And we are able to keep world trade flowing in the face of significant adversity. And that's been true for shipping's history.
So on Sunday, a Russian warship fired warning shots at a Palau-flagged cargo ship in the southwestern Black Sea. That's the first time Russia has fired on a merchant ship beyond Ukraine since they withdrew from this grain deal. That must be very concerning for you.
We deplore any actions that threaten the lives of seafarers and ships that are going about their legal business, and we would call on both of the combatants to fulfil their obligations under UNCLOS and let legitimate trade continue. The warning shots and boarding increase the threat profile in this region. It's much further south than we've seen threats previously, and that will have to be factored into the threat assessments that ship owners conduct when they're transiting these waters. We haven't seen to date a drop-off in the ships that are willing to go to Constantia and the Danube ports to try and access this cargo, though.
OK. You mentioned insurance costs a little earlier. How much have they increased since the full-scale invasion began?
Following the invasion, a war risk area was declared in the region by the Joint War Committee at Lloyd's. That means that ships will pay a premium in addition to their normal insurance costs. That will vary depending on who your brokers are, who you are insuring with, but it has increased the cost of shipping in the region. It's important to note, of course, that north of 45, there is no insurance being offered at the moment, although we understand that some insurers are considering it so that ships can use the temporary corridor that Ukraine has declared to the three ports that were previously in the Black Sea Grain Initiative.
And just briefly, 45 is what?
It's a line roughly from Sevastopol west.
All right, good talking to you.
It's the northwestern Black Sea.
Thanks for outlining that so clearly for us. John Storpert from the International Chamber of Shipping.
And Armian is now back in Kyiv for us. Some of the people you spoke to are risking their lives trying to export grain. What's driving them?
Well, beyond just trying to save their livelihood, there's a certain sense of national pride here. Everyone we talked to along the whole system told us that they understand that the world is waiting for their grain, that a lot of countries depend on Ukrainian grains and seeds like corn, wheat, barley, and sunflower seeds, which Ukrainian produces the majority in the world of sunflower seeds. So they have a responsibility and a duty here. That's what they told us. A lot of men, especially in Ukraine right now, are struggling to find a job, and especially a job that they feel supports the war effort, and they feel that they have one and are willing to take major risks in order to keep doing it. That doesn't mean that everyone we talked to was not facing difficulties. Of course they are. The farmers we talked to were worried about their financial difficulties. The truckers were just completely exhausted. Many didn't even want to talk to us, just waiting weeks to get this grain out, to get back home. And of course, the shippers are taking a big personal risk being in warehouses that they know are Russia's #1 target on the Danube River. But all in all, they said they will keep doing it because it's their duty. It will help the war effort and will help Ukraine.
Yeah, of course, because we're talking revenues the state needs to finance its defence. So how is the Ukrainian state supporting these people to get grain out of the country?
Well, they're doing two major things. One is to give support to the Danube ports, financial, but also security. There's talk of giving them more air defense systems. Now, we weren't able to confirm this because those are, of course, secret, but there is certainly a lot of effort there to make sure that Russia cannot repeat this attack, that these two attacks on Reni and Ismail. The other is to make the Black Sea once again viable for foreign ships. Now, they cannot make it completely safe. The water is heavily mined. Russia has said that it will attack foreign ships going to Ukrainian ports under the understanding that this could be military shipments. But Ukraine has tried to establish corridors and has just announced that they're going to give permission to foreign ships to use these corridors that are protected by the Ukrainian Navy, and to pay, the government will pay for the damages incurred if they do hit a mine or are attacked by Russian ships. So this is one way that Ukraine is trying to make sure that this grain can get out of the country.
OK, and you mentioned in your report that the western border area of Ukraine, very close to NATO member Romania, there are frequent and risky attacks there from Russia.
That's right. We haven't seen Danube port attacks in the past couple of weeks, but that's still a threat. But just last night, the Lviv Oblast and the Volyn Oblast were hit. Several people died. Russia is not afraid of striking close to the Polish and Romanian borders. They've shown this over and over again. Russia claims that they're hitting military targets, but a lot of Ukrainians understand this as a form of terrorism to remind the whole country that they're at war here. The attacks on the Danube ports were the closest we've seen since the beginning of the war to NATO territory. Russia did attack with Shahed kamikaze drones, which shows that Russia is a little bit worried about escalating here. Kamikaze drones fly very slow compared to missiles, but Russia also wants to send the message that up to the very line of delineation, Ukraine is not safe from Russian attacks, and Ukraine has to deal with that threat.
Ami and Isif reporting from Ukraine. Thank you.